Burger King, buying books, and tomatoes. Not buying tomatoes. I suppose you could buy tomatoes. We're not going to talk about tomatoes. Can you think of anything but tomatoes right now? That's today's episode. Welcome to How to Switch to a Tech Career in Your 30s and 40s. It's the podcast where we love to get excited and down to brass tacks, talking about the real things that help you move the needle when you switch from any other career into a high-tech or IT career. And this is where we're going to discuss the real hints, tips, tricks, and the methods and the protocol that help you switch into a real tech career. So welcome. That is what we're going to talk about. We want to help you get into a tech career, even if you've never been in one before. And I hope that's why you're here. We are going to be talking about Burger King, buying books, and tomatoes. As I already mentioned, you will not be talking about Brooks. I'm talking to myself. Brooks, you will not be talking about buying tomatoes. You grow your own tomatoes, at least your wife does. So we won't be talking about buying them. But let's talk about tomatoes sometime. We'll get to it and what that has to do. Well, with anything about switching to a tech career. Let's start off with Burger King. Last night, if you were in the Rosemount, Minnesota area, you may have caught me at a Burger King. What was I doing there? Well, I was getting dinner for myself, which is really odd. I'm usually with my family, usually my ever-dwindling and moving out family. My wife Jen and I have 6 kids, if I haven't told everybody about that yet, but 6 kids and 3 have moved out. Wait, yeah, it is 3. Ethan just moved out. So we're down to just 3 in the house now. And along the way as well, we've had some other people live with us. I'm thinking of for periods of more than 1 month. So between 1 month and 2 years or a year and a half or so, we've had 4 other people. Our house has been filled. So me going out to dinner alone is weird. So why did I do that? Well, I was there for many hours. If you were at that same Burger King, which you weren't, because at the end it was empty, except for me and the employees who were fastidiously, meticulously mopping up. There we go. Meticulously mopping. That makes for a great property variable name. Meticulously mopping. That Burger King. And so why I was there was to study and to do a project I'm working on. And the thing is about becoming a developer is the times, the markets change, and you should always be working on your craft. I think that people know this who are trying to hire you. If you learned something 15 years ago, now you still may know that, but 15 years in the technology industry is like 100 years. Now, the good news is our brains still can remember things from 15 years ago, but probably can't remember too much from 100 years ago. If you know someone that's old enough to remember anything from 100 years ago, that'd be a miracle. I was working on a project there, and one of the concepts that really got me creating more of my tech career accelerator program was the concept of sitting down and studying and doing what Cal Newport has called deep work. And there have been other authors or writers, bloggers, whatever, people on Twitter talking about deep work. But the truth is that the concept of getting things done it has always been there, but now we're starting to observe how people get things done more quickly. When it comes to figuring out how to understand or put together code to complete new algorithms that are new to each of us. It takes a lot of mental work, and that requires focus. If you cannot focus and you expect to switch into a tech career, you will be in trouble. You'll just never do it. And then if you do enough focus and then you get your job, your first job, it's not going to be your dream job. I talk about that in Tech Career Accelerator as well. We quash expectations. But you get your first job and you've done a lot of deep focus and you've done a lot of hard work and sitting down and what we call heads down development or heads down personal development if you're not a coder. Then after you get your first job, you may be given a task that's difficult. You will have to continue to deep focus in your life. In fact, you may do it more in your first couple of years than ever after. There was one gentleman who came to me asking for help to switch to a tech career, and he said that let me back up. I don't do a lot of edits on these podcasts, just so you know. I do edit, try to keep out a lot of the weird noises that humans make, including myself. Try to keep those out somehow. But I don't do a lot of go back and re-record. All right, so someone came to me, and he had a job that was based overseas, but he was in America. And he said, I have a tech job. I have my first tech job. And I said, well, then why are you coming to me? Because I help people switch into tech jobs. And he said, well, although I have my first tech job, I am really, really stuck and I need help. I said, so you need help leveling up your tech job? He said, sort of. And then he described a scenario in which he got this job and he was so much better, even though it was his first job in tech. He was so much better than the person that he replaced. And he offered so much help that the company bore down on him and expected him to work between 10 and 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And he didn't know how to stop that. I think this had been going on for 4 months, and he was just ready to quit. So that example from that real life scenario is just to illustrate that once you start learning things, if you have a problem with thinking that you're not enough, if you have a problem with setting boundaries in your life, then what's going to happen is you're going to be overwhelmed and constantly need to focus. And that's impossible. You can only focus for a few minutes at a time. And you can only do that if you intentionally set aside a place and a time and a purpose for doing it. So all this goes back to say, I was at Burger King. Of all the restaurants I could choose, I chose Burger King to sit down and focus. And I was there for 3 hours. I think I got up out of my chair 3 times. One, other than ordering. One was to refill Coke. I never drink Coca-Cola. I used to be a coffee guy. That's for another podcast, why I switched. I also got up a second time to drink Coke, and I never drink Coke. I drink tea. That was my replacement for coffee. But last night I got up to refill Coke, got up another time to refill Coke, and then I knew better, and I got up the third time to refill in water. Other than that, for 3 hours, I was in my chair. The moral of the story is if you need to focus, you probably need to switch places. If you're coming to this podcast and thinking that it's difficult to switch to a tech career and you've had some bumps and bruises, or it's been 2 years and you had this dream a while back and then you made some progress and you ebbed and flowed in your progress toward getting your first job, and now you're just stuck or lost and you don't know if it's possible at all, there's a good chance that you haven't learned how to focus. So I would recommend getting away and finding a place. Find a place. Let's say, see if I can make a little acronym out of this. You need a place, you need a purpose, and you need, I don't know what the next one would be. You need a place, a purpose, and a time. Anyway, that's what you need. So I have gone to, I've talked about Chinese food before on this podcast. I've done that. I've been to Burger King, and 2 nights ago to work on the same project, I was at Starbucks. You can go wherever you want, but I suggest you get out of the house and into a new place. When we change up our location, things happen in our brain. I do not have any scientific research to prove that, but it's clear when you go take a walk outside versus walking on the treadmill. It is a different physical experience, of course, but the brain does something when you're on a walk. There's something about making progress physically outside versus the thing that we make a funny metaphor about. We get stuck on a treadmill is the metaphor. And that's because when we're on a treadmill, we go nowhere. Same thing with studying. You may not be getting somewhere. Maybe you have to go somewhere to get somewhere. So I suggest you get out of the house and block some time. And you know what's going to happen if you have little kids running around? Like I mentioned, I've got 3 still around. They're not so little anymore, but they're there. They require attention, and they need it and deserve attention from their dad. But if you need to get something done, say, hey guys, really need to dedicate some time, and get out there and do it. So that's why I was at Burger King. I would say if you're ever in Rosemount, Minnesota, you are going to need to hit that Burger King if you crave Burger King for some reason, because it is quite clean. I give my approval to that Burger King. Cleaner than Starbucks. Any Starbucks I've been in, really. So, Burger King buying books and tomatoes. Let's talk about buying books. This morning, I'm going to grab it here. This morning, I got a book in the mail that I purchased. I've purchased many books. I'm going to give you 2 books that I have gotten. 1 second here. Back to me not editing my podcast very much. All right, because I really don't want to. I want to give you some value, and otherwise I might not get it done. So I'm taking a little lunch break and recording this. All right, I have 3 books to recommend. 1, Algorithms by Panos Louridas. Boy, I do not know where Panos is from. Sounds kind of Greek. I don't know. Oh, from Boston. No. It's the MIT Press, but I'm sure Panos is, if I pronounce that incorrectly, that's high probability. But this is a little book. If I did a video podcast, you could see this. But picture 255 pages or so, all on algorithms for any coding language. And so there's stories, there are, flashbacks to the start of algorithms, sorting algorithms, searching, etc., etc. And 255 pages, graphs, whatever. But it is small. So if you hold out your hand, I kind of have, I play violin, so I've got these skinny fingers, but my hand is kind of long. I can't quite palm a basketball. So picture my hands, can't quite palm a basketball. I can almost palm it if I get the grip right. It's as big as my hand. And then it's about less than an inch thick. So Algorithms by Panos Louridas. The second book I recommend. This is old school. It's the 20th anniversary edition. And if you're switching to a tech career in your 30s or 40s, hey, you are old school as well. I think after old school, I graduate to just old. All right, but I'm still learning, so I'm old school. All right, so this is by David Thomas and Andrew Hunt. David Thomas and Andrew Hunt. It is called The Pragmatic Programmer. Pragmatic Programmer. And a third book I have not read. I just got it today. This is the biggest book. It is tons of pages. It is 690 pages, 2 inches thick, maybe, and it's a big one. Cracking the Coding Interview, 189 Programming Questions and Solutions by Gail Lakeman McDowell. So look up Gail McDowell, 6th edition. Here's the deal. I have been through a lot of programming interviews, coding interviews. And if you're going into a programming job or you're aiming at it, front end, back end, any sort of developer, engineer, cloud, it doesn't matter. You're going to get some sort of coding questions, probably. I'm just going to guess. And I know if you're a mobile engineer, you will. That's what I've been doing. So this is my second coding interview book I've had. And you're going to laugh at me. The first one I got the job and I threw away the book. I was done. Just done. It's so hard to read these books, but they helped me get me the jobs. So I can't recommend this yet, although this was passed on by an iOS blogger. I forget his name, but he passed it on he passed on the recommendation through his blog. I don't know him. And so I bought it. And I think this is a huge, great investment. And I will say, if you're listening to the podcast right now, and let's just set a date. It's before, you're listening before April 19th, 2024. All right? You're listening before April 19th, 2024. I've mentioned 3 books here. Let's just do this. The first 2 people, I have a small listenership. The first 2 people before April 19th, 2024, to email me at info@techlead.com. I'll send you one of these books for free. And tell me which one sounds most interesting to you. So info@techlead.com. First 2 people to email me and request the books and tell me a little bit about yourself if you're trying to switch to a tech career, and I'll send you one of the books for free. Not a huge prize, but hey, this is not a huge podcast so far. I would recommend you buy books. I can recommend hands down that books are better than online training. Now, can they cover everything you need to know? Of course not. I have Tech Career Accelerator, which is my strategic advisor program that I'm a strategic advisor helping people. There's also online trainings like Coursera, Udemy, Simply Learn, all these, and so many more. There's LeetCode and other places where you can learn programming, for example, and get certifications. But the deal is, if you have a book in front of you, you can focus. And if you aren't into reading, a book forces you to get offline and take time and do it anywhere. And it's just a different kind of learning. If you're in your 30s and 40s, you know what I'm talking about. If you're listening and you are in your 20s or teens, you don't get it. You probably don't understand, so trust me. And if you are, you should email me and I'll send you one of these books. See what you think. Okay. So buying books, now let's get to tomatoes. We covered Burger King and buying books, and now let's talk tomatoes. All right. If you have been trying to figure out something about these tomatoes, why I would mention tomatoes, and I have to go online right now. I got to figure out if this is the right word. Because I think I know things, and then I say them, and then my wife, Jen. Oh, let's see. I think I got it. Pomodoro timer. All right, you can Google that. Pomodoro timer. Hey, if you need one of these, I could send you a cheap one instead of the book. So keep that in mind. Last night when I was doing a project, I set my timer on my wristwatch for 20 minutes. Actually, this was yesterday morning at about 5:30 a.m. And I went 3 or 4 rounds of 20 minutes. I was trying to accomplish something very specific that I could do, but not without a lot of help. And so the timer focused my time, and something happens to my brain when I put on a timer and I've got one task in front of me. Shut down all distractions and go for it. When you do this, you know you have a break coming up. So your mind tells you it's okay to focus. Also, you have a break coming up. So your mind tells you you've got to focus and get this done because you've got to have this specific small task done in 20 minutes. That's the concept of the Pomodoro timer. And why do I say tomatoes? Well, I just learned yesterday that the person who came up with this idea, I'm sure he or she is all over online, but he or she was using a kitchen timer, I guess in the shape of a tomato, I guess, according to legend. So you can find that out online. But basically, a tomato was the concept, and I guess that's what Pomodoro means. I'm not pronouncing it correctly, I'm sure, but it means tomato. Setting a kitchen timer and setting our goals helps us easily accomplish those goals. So if you don't believe that, you should try it, and maybe you will get some results. Like I do. Every time I do it, I get results. I hope that this episode was good for you, talking about getting away and going to a new place, getting good books, and you can email me, first 2 people before the 19th of April. We'll get one of those books or a timer, and talking about that timer itself. We'll see you next time. I appreciate you, the listener. You took time to join this podcast and listen to the things that I've said. So I want to just say thank you. If you check the show notes, you will notice a couple links there. And one of them is to be an interviewee on this podcast. You can do it using your name. We can interview you, give you some coaching. You can also do that interview anonymously with an ID so that you won't be found out at your current job. So we want to be sensitive to you in that way, but also give you some help. So check the link for that application and for other free information. Join us next time. Thanks again for listening.